The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to keep its key interest rate steady, citing uncertainties from the Iran war and rising concerns about inflation. But the decision was the most divided in decades, with 8 officials voting to hold rates and 4 dissenting. Samsung Electronics has reported an over 8-fold increase in first quarter operating profits. The company posted an operating profit of 57 trillion Korean won, or around $38.5 billion. U.S. President Donald Trump has said his administration is reviewing a possible reduction of American troops stationed in Germany, following his criticism of the German chancellor over the war in Iran on Tuesday. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. The U.S. Federal Reserve has held rates steady for a third straight meeting amid war-driven inflation fears and economic uncertainty. As nominee Kevin Walsh nears confirmation, Korea's central bank has voiced concerns over the outlook for U.S. monetary policy. Our Kim Jun-ho reports.
The U.S. Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged at 3.5 to 3.75% on Wednesday, in what is likely to be Jerome Powell's final meeting as Fed chair. The decision was announced after a divided FOMC regular meeting and marks the third consecutive rate freeze this year. Explaining the move, the central bank pointed to mounting inflation pressure from rising global oil prices tied to the Middle East conflict, as well as growing economic uncertainty.
The U.S. economy has been expanding at a solid pace. While job gains have remained low, the unemployment rate has been little changed in recent months. Inflation has moved up and is elevated, in part reflecting the recent increase in global energy prices.
The decision was the most divided since 1992, with 4 of the 12-member committee dissenting, including 3 who took issue with language in the post-meeting statement that suggested the central bank could eventually resume rate cuts. The Fed said it remains committed to achieving its 2% inflation goal over time, adding it is prepared to adjust policy if risks threaten the path, a signal some analysts say leaves the door open to rate cuts. The meeting was also likely the final FOMC session under Jerome Powell. However, at a press conference on the same day, he said he plans to stay at the central bank as a member of its board of governors.
After my term as chair ends on May 15, I will continue to serve as a governor for a period of time to be determined. I plan to keep a low profile as a governor.
The June FOMC meeting is expected to be chaired by nominee Kevin Walsh. The Senate Banking Committee on Wednesday advanced Walsh's nomination to the full Senate, and if confirmed, he is expected to assume the role after Powell's term as chair ends. Meanwhile, Korea's central bank said the Fed's split decision has added to uncertainty over the future path of U.S. monetary policy, particularly ahead of the next chair's inauguration. Earlier Thursday, the Bank of Korea pointed to deeper divisions within the FOMC and rising inflation pressure from higher oil prices. The central bank added it will stay alert, monitor risks including the situation in the Middle East closely, and act as needed. Kim Jun-ho, Arirang News.
And Korea posted a triple gain in March with industrial output, retail sales, and facility investment all rising on month for the first time in 6 months. Data released Thursday by the Ministry of Data and Statistics showed industry production edged up 0.3% last month, marking the second consecutive month of increase. Industrial and manufacturing output both rose 0.3%, but semiconductors, which have been a key driver, saw a fall of around 8%. Refined petroleum products also dropped by about 6%, partly due to the impact of the Middle East conflict. Domestic demand showed signs of recovery, with services, retail sales, and facility investment all posting gains in the 1% range. Samsung Electronics reported an over 8-fold increase in first quarter operating profits. The company on Thursday posted an operating profit of 57.23 trillion Korean won, which is around $38.54 billion. Now that's an increase of 756% compared to the same period the previous year. Over 93% of Samsung's operating profit came from semiconductor sales. The Consumer Electronics and Mobile Division, which recently launched the Galaxy S26 series, posted a solid but comparatively modest 3 trillion won in operating profit. Samsung projected that the second half of the year carries risks, including global tariffs and geopolitical uncertainty. The company said it plans to maintain stable business operations by responding flexibly to changes in market conditions and strengthening the competitiveness of its high value-added products. On the cultural front, K-pop concerts are delivering a major boost to Korea's tourism economy. Recent data shows the BTS effect is providing a much-needed boost to the economy, as fans tend to stay longer and spend more compared to the average tourist. Our Chung Il-im tells us more.
Global K-pop superstar group BTS has proved its significance in Korea's tourism economy. According to a report released today by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, foreign visitors who traveled to Korea for BTS concerts stayed longer and spent significantly more than the average tourist. Data from the Gwanghwamun Square concert in March shows that foreign visitors stayed an average of 8.7 days, which is 2.9 days longer than the general tourist average of 6.1. Their spending averaged 3.53 million won, or some $2,300 per person, nearly 1.5 times the typical tourist. The impact was seen more concentrated in local neighborhoods. In Daehwadong, Goyang, where the band performed earlier this month, the number of foreign visitors skyrocketed 35-fold compared to the same period last year, from about 1,000 to about 48,000. Foreign car transactions climbed from roughly 8.9 million won to over 330 million won, or about $228,000, marking a 38-fold surge compared to the same period a year earlier. Experts attribute this to the BTS The City program, which links the concert venue with landmarks in Seoul's Yongsan and Myeongdong. Instead of just attending a concert, fans are engaging in stay-type tourism, exploring filming locations and museum exhibits. Experts say rising interest in K-culture has turned into an engine, driving a paradigm shift in Korea's tourism industry.
With BTS resuming group activities, global fans are turning their focus back to Korea. We're seeing a massive influx of international tourists whenever these major concerts take place. It's a very positive sign that proves the real-world impact of Korea's cultural assets through hard data.
The government is now taking this blueprint nationwide. To coincide with the upcoming BTS Busan concerts in June, a special welcome week will be held from June 1st to the 15th. Chung Il-im, Arirang News.
As Washington ramps up pressure on Tehran to strike a deal, U.S. President Donald Trump has signaled a prolonged naval blockade of Iranian ports. Now the move comes as the U.S. defends its costly military operations with a warning that Iran's nuclear strategy mirrors that of North Korea. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump is weighing options to ease the global energy impact of a potential long-term blockade of Iran as tensions in the region remain unresolved. According to a White House official on Wednesday, Trump met with major oil executives the day before to discuss ways to mitigate disruptions as the United States continues efforts to pressure Tehran through a naval blockade targeting its oil exports. The blockade is aimed at forcing Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global shipping route. Speaking to reporters, Trump praised the operation and signaled it could remain in place for an extended period and urged Iran to move quickly toward a deal.
Well, the blockade is genius, okay? The blockade has been 100% foolproof. It shows how good our Navy is, I can tell you that. Nobody's going to play games. We have the greatest military in the world, and I built much of it during my first term, and we've been building it since, and the greatest anywhere in the world. No.
Trump has also voiced strong support for the United Arab Emirates' decision to leave OPEC, calling it a positive step toward lowering global energy prices. He said the move could help bring down the cost of oil and gasoline, adding that internal challenges within the cartel may be driving member countries to reconsider their positions. At the same time, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth defended Washington's military actions against Iran during a congressional hearing, where officials estimated the cost of operations has reached $25 billion. Hegseth warned that Iran's nuclear ambitions reflect a pattern seen in North Korea, arguing that Tehran, like Pyongyang, is building a conventional missile shield to support its pursuit of nuclear weapons.
It's the North Korea strategy. You know this very well. The North Korea strategy was use conventional missiles to prevent anybody from challenging them so they could slow walk their way to a weapon.
He described North Korea's program as a key lesson for policymakers, underscoring the urgency of countering similar developments in Iran. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the U.S. government is reportedly reviewing the possibility of reducing the number of American soldiers stationed in Germany. According to U.S. President Donald Trump on Truth Social on Wednesday, Washington is evaluating a potential troop drawdown, and that a decision will be made in the near future. The remarks come amid growing dissatisfaction in Germany over the conflict with Iran. Earlier this week, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz openly criticized the United States, saying it had entered the war without a clear strategy and was being humiliated by Iran's leadership. Merz also warned that the prolonged blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is delivering a direct energy shock to Europe, and proposed a European-led initiative to deploy German minesweepers to help clear naval mines in the critical waterway. Amid concerns that friction over e-commerce giant Coupang's legal case may be stalling security talks between Seoul and Washington, our Oh Soo-young spoke with a former U.S. diplomat who says the alliance itself remains firm but should be managed.
Korea and the United States should focus on building a future nuclear and high-tech partnership, overcoming commercial sticking points in their bilateral relations. That's according to Henry Haggard, a former U.S. State Department official, now a senior advisor at West Exec Advisors. He spoke with Arirang News amid concerns in Seoul that corporate disputes are affecting sensitive security talks, after more than 50 U.S. lawmakers in Washington raised concerns over regulatory treatment of U.S.-linked firms including Coupang. Seoul and Washington's joint bilateral fact sheet last year was expected to pave the way for discussions on advancing cooperation in nuclear-power submarines, as well as fuel processing and enrichment under the existing civil nuclear framework. However, talks have been stalled for at least 2 months this year, despite the strategic interest for both sides. As Washington calls on its allies to build their own capabilities and invest in U.S. industries, Korea is ready to be a key partner with a $350 billion investment framework and the industrial base to support U.S. shipbuilding and nuclear supply chains.
So this unlocks a new level of cooperation. It allows and it encourages and works towards less reliance on Russia. I think there's also a significant knock-on effect into the civil nuclear space. Just the fact that we're working more on all things nuclear, I think will also build the natural conversation towards more cooperation on small modular reactors, on traditional reactors, in a space that again represents, over $1 trillion of market over the next 25 years.
National Security Advisor Ri Sung-lak has acknowledged that the Coupang case is affecting the atmosphere of Korea-U.S. consultations and stressed the two issues must remain separate. He said the alliance requires constant management, describing it as a garden that needs ongoing care. Haggard said commercial disputes have risen time and time again, but are simply part of growing pains.
It's not just about the security relationship, it's also this technological relationship and this very advanced relationship. That's where we should be heading. To do that, we have to find a way to manage Korea's regulatory evolution, and the U.S. has to understand how Korea works such that they can match that pace and that evolution and profit from it. Really, I mean, it's a win-win.
Amid concerns, Haggard expressed confidence that the alliance itself is not being undermined and remains on course towards a more strategic partnership. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
A day after the appellate verdict for former First Lady Kim Gun-hee, the court on Wednesday delivered its second instance ruling in the case against former President Yoon Suk-yeol on charges that included the obstruction of his arrest. Our political correspondent An Sung-jin has the details.
7 years. A special appellate panel at the Seoul High Court dedicated to insurrection-related cases sentenced former President Yoon Suk-yeol to 7 years for obstructing his own arrest and related charges on Wednesday afternoon.
The defendant is hereby sentenced to 7 years of imprisonment.
This is more than the first ruling, which was 5 years, but less than what prosecutors had appealed for, which was 10 years. Yoon's defense team stated that they will be appealing. The appellate ruling for Yoon, which began at 3 p.m., was live-streamed, and the verdict was handed down at around 4 p.m. The court cited a range of factors in making the decision: violation of the Presidential Security Act for ordering the deletion of secure phone records, obstruction of martial law declaration documents, abuse of power, and special obstruction of public officials and execution of duties during Yoon's first attempt to block arrest. This marks the first appellate decision tied to allegations surrounding the December 3rd martial law declaration and the inaugural case handled by the court's insurrection-focused division. Former President Yoon Suk-yeol faced multiple charges, including allegedly mobilizing the Presidential Security Service to obstruct the execution of an arrest warrant by the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. He's also accused of convening a flawed meeting ahead of declaring the emergency martial law and drafting the martial law proclamation, destroying it, and ordering the deletion of secure phone call records. In the initial trial held in January, the court sentenced him to 5 years in prison, which the prosecutors from the special counsel appealed, arguing it was too lenient, leading to this appeal. Meanwhile, in a separate case on charges of leading an insurrection, Yoon was sentenced to life imprisonment in February, with the appellate trial currently underway. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he discussed a possible ceasefire in Ukraine during a 90-minute phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin also said Putin proposed a temporary halt to mark the World War II victory anniversary on May 9th. Trump told reporters he floated the idea of a ceasefire and added he thinks Putin might go along with it. A similar truce announced by Putin last year lasted 3 days but was never agreed with Kyiv. Trump also said Putin offered assistance on the issue of Iran's enriched uranium, but he told Putin he first wanted him focused on ending the war in Ukraine. In North London on Wednesday, 2 Jewish men were stabbed on the street. Both men are in hospital in stable condition. A 45-year-old suspect was arrested after police brought him down with a taser. London's police chief said the suspect had a history of serious violence and mental health issues. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the attack utterly appalling and pledged increased funding for Jewish community security. North London's Jewish community has also been the target of recent arson attacks. All 4 of America's largest technology companies beat Wall Street expectations in their quarterly earnings reports on Wednesday, but market reaction was mixed, with investors focused less on what these companies earned and more on what they plan to spend. Alphabet rose nearly 7% after hours after its cloud unit reported 63% growth, and its total revenue hit nearly $110 billion. Amazon gained 4% on strong revenue of $181 billion. Microsoft was little changed despite beating forecasts, but Meta was the outlier, falling over 6% after hours after raising its 2026 spending plan to as much as $145 billion. President Trump says his administration will release as much information as possible on UFOs in the near future. He said on Wednesday that a government review has turned up, quote, a number of interesting documents. Trump set the review in motion back in February, directing agencies to open records on unidentified aerial phenomena. Prior Pentagon investigations concluded no proof of extraterrestrial activity on Earth has ever been found. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
The last day of April brings sun, clouds, and spotty rain. The capital area is enjoying clear skies and pleasant spring sunshine, but from late this afternoon, much of the southern provinces and Jeju-do Island will see 5 to 10 millimeters of rainfall through tonight, while Jeju could receive showers into tomorrow morning. Temperature-wise, a classic spring setup continues with cooler mornings and milder afternoons. Friday's highs will get up to 25 degrees, then Sunday, it will drop down to just 19 degrees here in Seoul. And just like yesterday, the capital area in Gangwon-do province will stay mostly sunny, but the rest of the country will be under cloudier skies. Seoul will be getting up to 23 this afternoon. Gyeongju, Gwangju, Daegu will be getting up to 20 degrees, but air quality will be decent nationwide all day today. Many seem to be taking a long weekend through Children's Day next Tuesday, but nationwide rain is expected next Sunday. Otherwise, it's going to be fairly sunny.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.